Dr. Lisa Palmer is a psychotherapist based in West Palm Beach. Lucky her. And let's find out what she has to say about this here on Talk Radio. Evening to you, Dr. Lisa.
Good evening to you.
Thanks for taking the time
Thanks
to
for having me on
talk
the
to
show.
us here on Talk Radio. So, firstly, what help will this be? Whether we love or loathe Meghan, whether we criticise her or not, whether we agree with her decision to go to the States or not, whether we agree with her decision to actually even reveal that she's been through this today, can we get some insight into what kind of help this will be to women, couples who have been through a miscarriage?
Well, definitely, because it's Meghan Markle and she is a public figure. And when she says something, people want to know what's going on. And especially at this time, I found that it was really interesting that she revealed this information now. When people are focused on happiness and gratitude, it's really kind of sad news. But when anytime a public figure is talking about something personal, people's ears perk up and they want to know, wow, she's dealt with it too. And the reality is that so many people do have miscarriages. About 10 to 20% of known pregnancies actually end in miscarriage. And so a lot of women have shame about this. They go through trauma. And when they see the Duchess of Sussex also experiencing the same thing, it brings a human aspect that she too can have this. So she can bring a lot of awareness to this issue to talk about it.
Well, again, I've been a critic of Meghan in the past, not all the time. I absolutely loved it when she joined the family, but I do think there have been a few missteps in some of their decision making, and I think it's been reasonable, some of the criticism that they've had. However, having said that, I'm acutely aware of how little miscarriage is spoken about in the media, especially by men as well, actually, in the media. So I know that this will have helped people. But a lot of people would perhaps be saying today, well, look, perhaps that kind of information needs to stay private. Maybe that kind of information is not something that should be going into the public domain. What would you say to some of those critics?
Well, honestly, there's so much information that the media can cover and they honestly don't. And it's really information that people want to hear. They want to talk about it. And unfortunately, a lot of times it takes a public figure, it takes a celebrity to have an issue, bipolar, depression, anxiety, suicide, for the media to raise awareness about mental health, about health issues, because people really do, Christo, people really do want to be educated about how to better their health and get to the root causes of their problems. So I'm hoping that this can be the beginning of something where people, the media, can start to cover issues, not just when, a celebrity has an issue, but to really realize that we need to be covering issues that pertain to a lot of people on a daily basis, and miscarriage is definitely one of them.
Well, I think that that's a pretty staggering figure that you've just come up with. I mean, and I've seen it before, that between 10 and 20%, so that can be, 1 in 5, 1 in 10 pregnancies don't end up proceeding beyond the first few months as a result of a miscarriage taking place, which is a huge figure when it comes to the number of miscarriages that happen. What can you describe, based on your experience, what a woman feels when she has a miscarriage? Because I think a lot of people, or perhaps, perhaps not in any kind of malicious way, but perhaps they just, again, having covered this story, I'm not a woman myself, and again, I can't speak on behalf of women, but I know a lot that have been affected by this, and there is a feeling that they should grieve a bit less, or that it is not perhaps as credible a thing for them to be upset about. I don't know. Do women feel that? Do women go through that?
So essentially, it's a trauma. It's a trauma for a lot of women. And that's perfectly normal because they've lost something that was a part of their body. And a lot of women feel helpless when this happens. They feel like they've lost some control over themselves and they weren't able to rescue their own baby. So it is a loss in that particular way, and they go through a lot of grieving and sadness, and they have different kinds of emotions that come up with the grieving process. And essentially they experience like a soul loss, right? So it's a spiritual thing as well. But it's not just the loss of that part of them that never came to life. It's also the loss of the dreams and the aspirations that they had for this child about, what that life would be like and what their family would be like with that child in their life. So the grief and loss is about the future, and it's about the past, and it's also about their bodies in the present and their mind and body in the present. So
and a failure as well of their body. I remember when we would do this as a subject on the show, a lot of women, actually we spoke to a man tonight who said this very same thing, that a lot of women feel like there's something wrong with them, that their bodies have failed them, they failed somehow, that they've done something wrong.
And especially when the woman is getting a little bit older, and Meghan Markle is 39 now, that is very common, especially as you're getting older, and a lot of older women can have fertility issues. She's also been under a lot of stress this year with some different transitions and changes, and you just wonder if there's a little bit of personal blame, that she's maybe blaming herself for maybe some of the decisions. We don't know, but a lot of those decisions may have caused her some stress too, which could have resulted. And I have seen that in patients in the past where they've blamed themselves for some different decisions that they made in relationships and getting upset maybe when they shouldn't have gotten upset. So there's a lot of areas of one's life that they could start to blame themselves for the fact that the miscarriage happened.
And what about men in this? I actually want to read you a tweet that I've received. It's a text actually from Andy, and I think that this is a really interesting take on it. He says, the hardest thing for me as a man after losing our child was that everyone would ask, how's my partner doing? They never asked me how I was. You have to be strong for her, and you have to hide your pain. Again, to what extent in your experience is that the case, that men, the dads in this, perhaps forgotten about a little bit?
Well, they do, they do also feel that loss and that sense of loss, and that wanting to have been a father and not have been able to be a father. But also a lot of men, they feel the need to protect and to want to rescue. And this is one of those situations where they're also left feeling a bit helpless because there's really nothing they can do about what happened. So a lot of times they feel that sense of helplessness as well. But we do need to take into consideration that the men who are the to-be fathers are going to feel some depression and sadness, and maybe even some anger about what happened. Not a blame, but just people do get angry when they're grieving as well. So that is something that I'm glad actually that you brought up about the men, because I was going to bring it up.
Well, I think that as with so many issues, actually, I think that we sometimes just presume men are okay, or presume that I don't know, we just don't like to talk about it so much, and that's probably because men don't like to talk about these things themselves quite so much. I mean, that's another aspect of this actually, and as a psychotherapist you could probably give us all sorts of amazing reasons as to why this is, but why do you think as a society is this subject a little bit taboo? Do we all sort of cringe a little bit, or I don't know, feel a little bit funny talking about this? I mean, merely demonstrated by the fact that everyone's so amazed that Meghan's revealed this. Why is it such a taboo subject? I think that when somebody's uncomfortable talking about something, it makes other people uncomfortable talking about it too. And it's one of those very personal issues. A lot of times people don't want to talk about things when they feel sick or they feel ill. They don't want to be labeled. They don't want to be seen as damaged. And I think that as a woman, it is a sensitive issue, because essentially it's something that happened that it didn't go the way you wanted it to go, and you can feel very helpless and out of control, and maybe think something's wrong with your body. Something went wrong in the situation. And anytime that happens, people
feel they don't want to be pathologized, and we have to get away from that pathology as a culture as well, and that get away.
What do you mean by pathologized?
Labels, the diagnosis, the labels, the something is wrong with you.
What, so by revealing you've had a miscarriage, that's all that people see when they talk to you from then on, you mean?
I think generally people have that kind of perception that if they talk about a problem that they have, someone is going to jump to a conclusion or jump to a label of them, that something is wrong with them. They're going to say, oh, well, you should have done this or you shouldn't have done that, or, you know, whatever that label is. I'm not going to throw labels out there now, but whatever that label is, that there is something wrong with them. So a lot of times people hide sicknesses that they have, and they hide pains that they're experiencing. And I think you were talking before about men, and where this comes from, because a lot of men, they do hide their feelings, and there are certain emotions that maybe our culture teaches men it's not okay for them to express, but anger is okay for them to express. But they also have sadness, and they have frustrations, and so on and so forth, that they have to process, and they can't repress these different emotions. We have to be more open and accepting and less judgmental, and realize that people are people, and we go through things, and we all have traumas. I mean, nobody's immune from traumas. No celebrity's immune from traumas. No therapist is immune from traumas. And we have to just, accept people and be less judgmental, and realize that some of these things that happen to us are a part of life, and it happens to a lot of people. So we have to normalize it, and we have to validate and normalize people.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you for giving us your insights. That's Dr. Lisa Palmer, who's a psychotherapist, coming to us live from Florida.